Hey everybody, and welcome to another CollectionDX review. This time we're checking out the Mazinkaiser from the OVA of the same name, Mazinkaiser. And so this is the robot that Koji Kabuto pilots once Baron Ashura turns the original Mazinger into an evil robot. So as you can see, the Mazinkaiser's design is a lot pointier, sharper, and beefier than the Mazinger design, and even the Great Mazinger. So I do want to mention that this toy is a bit slimmer than how it appears in the OVAs. You can see the midsection is kind of slim. In the OVAs it was a little bit chunkier, a little bit bulkier, and so Bandai probably made this toy slimmer just to allow it to move a little bit more freely. While the Super Robot Chogokin Mazinkaiser may not be the most accurate toy of this design, it does have a lot of definition. Even the chest plates right there are a lot more defined than they are in the show. They actually kind of look like bat wings. In the show they actually don't have all these defined little points as much as the toy does, so that's kind of neat. You also see the little Z at the center, that little crystal, so that's pretty cool. I mean, Bandai usually puts a lot of detail into their toys. Now, if the Mazinkaiser's design wasn't pointy enough already, it does come with the Kaiser Scrander, which attaches to the back right there. And then the Kaiser Scrander definitely adds a lot more edges and sharp points to the design, but it does look cool. It's the oversized jetpack wings for the Mazinkaiser that allow it to fly in the OVA. Looks very cool. The Super Robot Chogokin Mazinkaiser is a nice solid piece of robot. Now the metal content is limited to the legs, these lower part of the legs right here. But even then, the rest of the figure is really solid, and having that metal content in the lower legs helps the robot balance very well. As you can see, it stands up with no issue, even with the Kaiser Scrander on. Like the other releases in the Super Robot Chogokin line, Mazinkaiser has a ton of articulation. I mean, even the horns on the head move. They really serve no purpose when they move, but hey, they move, so that's pretty neat. And now let's move on to the articulation that actually matters. So the head is on a ball joint. It's a little stiff, but it moves pretty decently. And the neck is on that panel right there underneath, so it can wobble back and forth a bit like that. As for these chest plates, they move up, and so this allows the arms to move a little bit more freely in that direction. Otherwise the chest plate would get in the way of the arm moving that way. The shoulder joint is similar to the Super Robot Chogokin Shin Getter 1. It's got that double joint. It's got a ball inside of the body, and then it's got another joint inside of the actual arm under the shoulder pad. And so the ball joint moves as a ball joint, and you can also extend it forward so that the arm can move that way. As for the joint inside of the shoulder pad, it's like a ring, and then this ball joint is attached to the inside of the ring. It's like a little panel inside the ring, and you can move the arm that way up and down. Now that joint is actually pretty tough, but luckily you don't have to move it too much, so it's pretty good. I guess it's stable. With the Shin Getter 1 there was a ratchet joint inside of the shoulder, and I think that one also popped in and out to allow the arms to extend even more. The Mazinkaiser doesn't have that joint, but it doesn't really need it. The shoulder pad can actually move up and down a bit too. It doesn't really seem to serve too much of a function. It doesn't really get in the way of the movement of the arms, and the arms don't have extreme movement to the point that you have to move the shoulder pad. Moving on to the arms, the lower arm plugs into the top of the arm right there at the bicep. So this creates kind of a bicep swivel of sorts, as you can see, and the arms are movable, and we'll go into that in a little bit. Mazinkaiser has a pretty neat elbow joint system. It basically consists of this panel right there that the peg goes into, that elbow joint peg. And so basically you just move the panel up, and that's your elbow joint. Now the neat thing about this is that it allows the forearm to get really close up to the bicep, as you can see. So pretty cool joint. Now the wrists are a simple ball joint, and this is actually my biggest complaint with the toy. A lot of the times when you try to take off the hand, and it didn't happen this time, but it happens quite often, I'll go to take off one of the hands and I actually end up popping off this whole joint right here. I was lucky it didn't happen this time, but it does happen quite frequently with this toy. It's kind of a nuisance really. It really drags down the experience of playing with the toy. I usually end up having to pop the joint back in, and also this little golden piece right here, that comes off if the joint comes off, so sometimes you have pieces flying all over the place. But it is a minor inconvenience for what is overall a pretty good toy. Moving on to another cool joint of this toy, you have this chest joint right there. It's basically a hinge, but you can't move it too much forward and back because of the pointy bits at the front. Now the cool thing is that this joint extends up, and so that makes the Mazinkaiser a little bit taller, and it also allows it to move a lot more back and forward. And where the lower abs connect to the hips, you have a ball joint, and those have a lot of movement. You got a nice amount of ab thrust going there. At the thighs we have these ball joints, and these are very similar to the Super Robot Chogokin Shin-Getter 1 ball joints. They extend out and they move side to side like so. So very similar construction to the Shin-Getter 1. Now with the Mazinkaiser, I like the fact that these ball joints fit in with the design. The dark grayish black of the ball joints kind of blends in with the black piece above it, so it's got that going for it. With the Shin-Getter 1, these ball joints were like a silver, like a darker silver, that really stood out. With the Shin-Getter 1, the top part of the leg was a white and red color, and so that didn't blend in very well. And then you had the white right there, so you could definitely tell that it was a ball joint. I mean, you can still see it on this, but it definitely blends in a little bit better. The knees are double jointed, and like the Shin-Getter 1, there is a collapsible panel at the back of the knee to allow the knee to move a little bit more. At the ankle, you have a nice stiff ball joint. It's good that it's stiff because it helps keep the poses. Now the only thing about the ball joint is that it is limited because you have these flared pieces at the side of the legs. And so each of the wings on the Kaiser Scrander is on a ball swivel. As I mentioned earlier, you can remove the lower part of the arms, and you can use this to kind of get some rocket punch action going. But that's not the only purpose to being able to remove the arms. So the Mazinkaiser was basically supposed to be like a companion release to the Shin-Getter 1, and that's why a little bit of the engineering is shared. So the reason for this is that you can mix and match parts between the Mazinkaiser and the Shin-Getter 1. And so here you have the Mazinkaiser with the Shin-Getter 1's lower arms, and also its flight pack, and vice versa. You have the lower arms of the Mazinkaiser on the Shin-Getter 1, and also the Kaiser Scrander on the Shin-Getter 1. So it provides some neat opportunities to swap around parts. The Super Robot Chogokin Mazinkaiser comes with not one, but two Kaiser Blades. First you have the normal Kaiser Blade right there, and you have the Kaiser Blade with the longer blade, which gives the sword that forced perspective look, so you can have a normal looking sword, and one looking big and menacing. Besides the fist, the Mazinkaiser comes with two other pairs of hands. You have the holding stuff hands and some splayed hands. Now the only issue I had with these is that the holding hands have a slightly loose fit over the sword. I mean, it holds it well enough, but the sword will slide around a bit, and it'll move up. It's not a nice tight hold over the swords. Also included is this little piece that attaches to a Tamashii stand, and then it plugs into the back of the Mazinkaiser. And so obviously this just allows you to use the Mazinkaiser along with a Tamashii stand. But the neat thing about this is it does give you some extra posing options with the Mazinkaiser. As you can see, he's giving us a Shoryuken right now, which he wouldn't be able to pull off without being on a stand. A little PSA for those thinking about buying the Mazinkaiser: the edges of this toy are sharp. As you can see, I cut myself. I actually have already written the written review for this toy, and in it I wrote, "Hey, I made it through the review without cutting myself." Well, I really have only one more part to shoot for this video. I'm going to do the wrap up and I'll be done. And lo and behold, I took the Kaiser Scrander off of the Shin-Getter 1 and I cut myself. So be careful, this toy can and will cut you. So before we call it a day with the Super Robot Chogokin Mazinkaiser, I decided we'd get a second opinion on this toy and see what somebody else thought about it. So I enlisted the help of J-Man to see what he thought of the Mazinkaiser. Let's check in with him and see what his thoughts are.
It's nice.
So there you have it. It's nice, short and to the point. So it's a very good action figure. It's got a flaw or two, but that's forgivable. It isn't the most accurate representation of the Mazinkaiser, as I've mentioned before, but it is a very cool looking toy. Obviously, if you want something more faithful to the source material, you can probably go out and get something else. But if you want a really good action figure of the Mazinkaiser, you can't go wrong with this guy. So this has been Sentai Seiya and J-Man for CollectionDX, doing another video review. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys around, or should I say, we'll see you guys around.